I think now everyone's present, so let's begin our meeting. And we'll take the agenda as printed. So item 1 is apologies. Looking at my screen, I don't think there are any apologies. I think we're all here.
Yep.
That can take us to item 2, declarations of interest. Now, I wish to make a declaration, though a non-prejudicial one, which is as regards item 6, the application for the APEDALE Heritage Centre. And I wish to do that because I am a member, though I'm not a governing member, I'm not on any committee or anything, but I am a member of the Moseley Railway Trust, who are the group who will benefit from the application. So I'd like that to be recorded as a non-prejudicial interest. Are there any other interests? If people raise their hands. I see no hands raised, so if members are happy with that, we'll progress to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. I think this really is down to myself and Marion more than anyone else, because we were the only ones there. Martin was there as well, of course. I am content with those minutes. I don't know about you, Marion. Are you happy with those minutes? You're muted. Hang on. Are you happy with that, Marion?
I am.
Excellent. So let's, in that case, I mean, those who were there were happy, so I hope the rest of you trust us. Let's progress to our first substantive item, which is item 4, for which I must draw your attention to the fact there's a supplementary report as well as the main report, which I hope members have read. And I suspect we will have a presentation, which may fall to Sean to do, who will need to be unmuted as well.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'll host the actual screen, but Elaine will join me and actually provide the detail on this one. So I'll start by actually hosting that display.
Okay, so can Elaine be? Ah, she is. Excellent. Right.
Okay. So members, you should have before you. Have you now got a screen with the development on it?
Yep.
The presentation for Eccleshall Road.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Elaine, would you like to take over at this point?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so what you can see now is the application site. So this is a site that has got outline plan permission for 55 homes, and the application that you're considering tonight is an application to vary one of the conditions, condition 6 of that planning permission. So the condition restricts the construction activity on the site, and the applicant's seeking to vary that condition to allow longer hours. So at the moment, the condition restricts the hours to 8 to 4 Monday to Friday and 8 to 1 on Saturday. Applicant is asking to amend that to 8 to 6 Monday through to Saturday. So that's the site, and you'll see the context. So there are residential properties in the surrounding area. Could you move on to the next slide, please? Okay, so we've got an aerial photograph. So the site is nicely cleared amongst the trees there, so you can see its extent. And the nearest residential property is that property directly adjoining the site, but there are properties opposite as well. Can you move on to the next slide? Right, so well, the next few slides just show some photographs of the context. So this is along the highway, Eccleshall Road, where the application site access is gained. And so that's looking up the road, that's looking along I think the site entrance might be just beyond the end of the green hedge on the right hand side. Can move on to the next one. So yeah, site entrance there. Next photo. So that's the nearest property you saw from the aerial photograph. Could you move on to the next photo, please? That is another property nearby. That's on the other side of the road, so you can see the proximity of the site to the surrounding area. So the next few photographs show you some more of the site context. So obviously this is a site within a residential area, so any construction activity will impact upon the amenity of the neighbours. And we're aiming to restrict the activities to an extent where people will not be unduly adversely affected. The recommendation is that not to accept the what the applicant is requesting. We would not wish members to agree to the extension of hours till 6 o'clock on a Saturday, but the extension till 6 o'clock Monday to Friday is acceptable. So the recommendation is to vary the condition so that the construction activity can take place between 8 and 6 Monday to Saturday and 8 and 1 on Monday to Friday, rather 8 to 6 Monday to Friday and 8 and 1 on Saturdays. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Elaine. Right, perhaps Sean, can you take your screen off? That's brilliant. That's the presentation we've had. I'd now ask if members wish to contribute for them to use their little raised hand gizmo.
Won't do it.
And I can see that Councillor Northcott wants to speak, and then Councillor Williams. So if we take Paul first and then John, and then Marion, I see he's also now put a hand up. So in that order. So Paul first, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate that. On the face of things, this doesn't seem an awful lot of change. However, just to bring to members' attention, there is a school virtually opposite there that is very busy, obviously round about school finishing time and school obviously starting time at 9 o'clock, which usually starts round about 7:45 and goes to anything just after 9 o'clock. I can concede the 8 o'clock start. It will be at a busy period. The impact on Loggerheads itself at the moment, there is a major development along that road, but just over the roundabout, that the residents are having to put up with at the moment. Fairly significant development, which will obviously add to the problems from one end and then add to the others from the other end. And I'm basically in agreement with the recommendations, with the exception of 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning. I think that's far too early, given that there's bungalows across the road as well. I think it would have been more reasonable to suggest that's a 9 o'clock start to give some of the residents their respite, bearing in mind they're going to be from 8 o'clock till 6 o'clock, and 8 o'clock for 6 days of the week. I think it's pushing just a little bit. I don't see there's a big issue in terms of an extra hour being lost there, being as they've been given 2 hours per day on the other days. I think that's a compromise I think we could live with. Other than that, I accept that 6 o'clock in the evening is going to be a busy time there. It will be after the school is collected. So you just got the commuter traffic to get on and off the estates that are opposite from that development. That being said, this is the real world and this is how things are brought about. So I've got no objections to that whatsoever. It's just the Saturday, I would prefer that was a 9 o'clock start to 1 o'clock just after lunch, and prove the others. I've got no other reservations other than that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Paul. What I'm going to do, Elaine, because I've noticed you put your hand up as well, I assume that's intentional. Can I ask you to respond at the end of the councillors' contributions, if that's okay? So in that case, let's go to John, who wants to join us as well and needs to be unmuted. Let me see if I can do that. I can do. Yeah, right, John, fire away.
So thanks, Chair. This application is very contentious at the beginning of the process, and I can understand people's concerns and Councillor Northcott's concerns. But a building site is not like a factory where people just clock on and clock off. The weather and other issues have a lot to do with when the people turn up to work. And I appreciate that the school is there, and I can't see en masse people coming, or the workers coming at 8 o'clock. They, as you know, they travel from all over now contractors travel from all over the place. They're not necessarily employed locally. So I think I'll go along with the recommendation. And there's any other circumstances where that would change my mind. So I'm quite happy with the recommendation. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, John. Let's go to Marion, who should be unmuted. So fire away, Marion.
Okay, I think Councillor Northcott has really verbalised what I wanted to say. I was just a bit concerned about the traffic flow and traffic involvement, but I think Paul has answered that question for me. I think I'm minded at this stage, unless Mrs. Moulton can tell me otherwise, to suggest that we do go on the Saturday from 9 till 1 rather than 8 till 1. But my other questions have actually been answered by Councillor Northcott.
Thanks, Marion. So let's go to Elaine, if I can find her, and she should be unmuted. So fire away, Elaine.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to remind members what the existing condition says. At the moment, the condition allows construction activity to start at 8 o'clock on a Saturday. They're not seeking to vary that part of the condition. It's already been deemed to be acceptable for an 8 o'clock start on a Saturday. And I don't consider that you can justify amending that start time on the basis that you're giving additional time during the week. I don't think you can, the one justifies the other. And yeah, just the point on this, the schools, at the moment the condition is 8 till 4, so the movements certainly at the end of the day are more likely to coincide with school movements, because they have to complete activity at 4, so there may be a bit of overlap with school, but with an extension to 6 p.m. they're more likely to avoid peak traffic and school traffic. So that's another reason why the variation to allow the additional construction activity time during the week is recommended.
Can I just ask one question, Elaine, because I think it's an important one at this point, given the times that have been raised. So permission for construction activity has been granted from 8 o'clock in the morning. That is not part of this application, is it?
No, they're not seeking to vary the start time. It's the end time. That's what the application is for, and yeah, that's what.
So in many ways, we will be caught in a contradiction were we to alter that start time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have deemed that to be acceptable. You'd have to justify why it's now unacceptable, and I can't give you reasons as to why that. You could what those justifications could be.
Okay, thanks very much, Elaine. So let's now see where we've got to, and I think where we've got to is really to ask Councillor Northcott in particular whether he wishes to progress with any form of amendment given what he's just heard. And yes, there we go.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, we are altering the parameters to accommodate one end. So why can't we alter the other? That's my question to the officers, really. I understand where she's coming from, and I understand obviously from the original one that came forward. But we're altering the amended times. So from one end, why can't we do it from the other end? Thank you.
If I can just, again, there we go. No, we aren't. My machine is being a little bit silly. But if I can just ask Elaine, what interests me really is that there seem to be two things which are distinct here. One is delivery times, and one is the beginning of construction, which seem to me two different things. Now, what I thought I heard you say was that we'd given permission for on-site activity, construction activity, to begin at 8 o'clock.
Yes.
Now, if we've done that, it seems to me that we are potentially in a form of contradiction if we then say that we can't have deliveries until 9 o'clock. But are these two separate, discrete things? That's my question, in essence.
Well, all construction activity, including deliveries, are restricted by the hours that are imposed. The 8, which are currently 8 till 4 Monday to Friday, 8 till 1 on Saturdays. So, but the variation of the condition would allow deliveries later in the day during the weekdays, and wouldn't change at the start of the day. So there's nothing to prevent planning committee from varying that start time on a Saturday. That's within your gift to make that decision, but you'd have to justify it on the basis that it was acceptable when planning permission was granted to for activity to start at 8 o'clock on a Saturday. You'd have to give reasons why it's now unacceptable, and that's the advice I can't give you, that there is any basis upon which to now conclude that it's unacceptable to start at 8 o'clock on a Saturday, and it's now only acceptable to start at 9.
Okay, thanks, Elaine. I think Bert wants to say something.
Yes, I listen with interest, but I think Councillor Williams was proposing that he recommended we go along with the officer recommendation, which are the hours as set, including Saturday start at 8 till 1. And I'm afraid that I really don't see any justification for taking that hour off Saturday morning just because we're giving additional hours Monday to Friday. And I think I'm inclined to support what Councillor Williams says in terms of supporting officer recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Moffat, please. It's not.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to say something that slightly contradicts what Councillor Proctor just said. I'm looking at the overall hours of work taking place and the effect that has on local residents. And so to give additional hours by extending till 6 during weekdays, I'm wondering whether a justification for having a later start on a Saturday could be in terms of the balance to the disturbance to the community.
Now, let me see. I saw Sean had his hand up before. He's got his hand up again. So perhaps if I can't see any other members got their hands up at the moment. So Sean, do you want to make a contribution at this point?
Thank you, Chairman. No, it's to reiterate the comments that Elaine has made. If we do get to a situation of looking at amending that start time of 8 o'clock on a Saturdays and pushing it back an hour, what we would need to have is some grounds to show that there's some additional harm in that sort of 8 till 9 period on the Saturday that historically was deemed acceptable and for now is deemed unacceptable. I understand from some members that there's this trade-off argument, but from my experience, that's never found favour with the inspectorate particularly. It's quite a difficult one to sort of say, well, you give with this and you pass over on that. It would be a very difficult case to sort of sustain. But really, it's an emphasis on sort of reiterating Elaine's comments on that one, if you're moving forward to a vote on that matter. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So really, we've got Councillor Northcott again who wishes to speak, I think, and what I'm going to do is ask him whether he wishes to continue with this and put forward a formal proposal, because I think we can see where the lines are here, and we should resolve what we feel. So Councillor Northcott, who, let me see if I can, you should be unmuted, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? Yeah. I'd like to formally propose that we accept this with a variance of the condition for Saturday, balancing out. We've conceded 10 hours more of construction time, and the trade-off will be the 1 hour on the Saturday. I wouldn't be able to support an 8 o'clock start on a Saturday. For some, it might sound over the top, but for my residents that are going to have to put up with this, plus the other one that's going on at the moment, believe you me, it makes a big difference when residents moan to me about being disturbed early in the 8 o'clock, because we all know that developers never quite stick to the times, and it's usually past the time when the complaints have gone in, and it's hard to prove that. So in reality of terms, I would like to propose that we accept this with the condition, the variant, the conditions of time on a Saturday to 9 o'clock. I wouldn't be able to support the other. Thank
Okay,
you.
so I'll look for a seconder for that proposal. Do we have any member who wishes to second Councillor Northcott? We do need a seconder for this.
I'll second.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a vote on Councillor Northcott's proposal that the variation is that we accept, but we add a variation which says on Saturday the starting time will be 9 o'clock, not 8 o'clock. Okay. Obviously, if that's passed, that's the end of the debate. If it isn't passed, I will then ask for a vote on the motion as in our papers. Okay. So I'm going to take the vote one by one. I'm going to do it member by member. So first, and as I see them on my screens. So in that case, first of all, Councillor Proctor, are you for or against the proposal of Councillor Northcott?
Against.
Okay. Councillor Maxfield, are you for or against the proposal of Councillor Northcott?
For.
Councillor Jones, are you for or against the proposal of Councillor Northcott?
Against.
Councillor Moffat, are you for or against the proposal of Councillor Northcott?
For.
Councillor Northcott, are you for or against your proposal?
For.
Councillor Williams, are you for or against?
Against.
Councillor Reddish? I can't hear you, Councillor Reddish. Hang on. I don't know what you've done, or what I've done. There. So you should be able to speak now, Councillor Reddish.
Right, for the amendment.
Okay. I am going to abstain, so I don't think I can see one side or the other of this, which means that that amendment is passed. Okay, so we'll progress to our next item, because that we agreed that that's how we would take this, and that brings us to, I'll have to switch my little gizmo on because it's gone to sleep. Our next agenda item, which is the application for mining development at BUTTERTON Grange Farm, and again I think we have a presentation. Am I correct in saying that? You could share your screen, Sean.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Okay, so I'll load up the BUTTERTON Grange.
Okay, do you want me to run you through the slides? Okay, so this is an application, part in retrospect, for the change of use of buildings and land to dog agility training. So the building that's already in use for that purpose is the building with the roof lights, the larger building there, and the land is the field to the rear. But the proposal is also for a new building. Could you move on to the next slide, please? Right. Well, we'll be able to show you a better image of the buildings. But yes, here we go. So that's the building that I showed you with the roof lights. B is the land, which is used for the purposes of dog agility training, and the new building is the building outlined in red there. The black area to the left-hand side is hard standing on the outside of the building. So the building is that shape. If you can move on to the next slide, you can see the appearance of the new building, which is not very similar to the appearance of the existing building on the site. If you could move on to the next slide, please. So yes, this is the internal floor space, the intended use of it. So as you can see, the majority of the floor space is given over to the training.
May I interject and just say, because I know this, but other members may not, that the small sort of blocks at the bottom there, that's seating and tables, is that correct? To give members some idea.
Yeah. That's shown as viewing gallery, waiting area, and vending machine. So yeah, so the dog training goes on in the larger area, but yes, if you're sat waiting or watching, you sit in those chairs there or at the tables there. If you could move on to the next photo. So that's the existing building, which is already in use for dog agility training, and the next photo shows you in use. I don't know whether you can see any dogs on the photographs, but you certainly see how it is used, the training facilities that are in that building. So that's the existing building. Butterton Grange Farm is a grade 2 listed building. We can go back to the one of the earlier slides. Oh well, if you go to the aerial photograph, sorry. So the listed building is the building, yes, where the hand is now. So there are a few intervening buildings between the listed building and the building that is already in use for the training facilities, and certainly where the new build goes, which is to the rear of that building. Yes, in the area where the hand is showing you now. So the officer view is that there won't be any adverse impact on the listed building, but this is a greenbelt site. It is deemed to be appropriate development in the greenbelt because it is an appropriate facility used in connection with an outdoor sport or leisure activity, and the view is that it will, because it's sited within close proximity to existing buildings, preserve the openness of the greenbelt. The other issue, key issue, is impact on residential amenity because of the proximity of residential properties, but there are recommended a number of conditions which seek to restrict the activity to ensure that it is acceptable and won't adversely affect residential amenity. And just to clarify, the condition which relates to the restriction on the number of dogs, it is 6 dogs in any of the 3 areas. So in the existing building, the new building, and in the training area, you can have 6 dogs in each of those at any one time, but no more than that. And that is the basis upon which the noise impact assessment was undertaken, and that is the basis upon which the Environmental Health Division have raised no objections to the proposal. That and the restriction or the requirement that the activity, the business, is connected with the occupation of Butterton Grange Farmhouse because of a close proximity. There needs to be some connection between the occupation of the dwelling and the business. I think that's as much as I can say at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Elaine. If you can again, Sean, unshare that thing, and perhaps we can come back to it if we need it. May I start by making asking a question, which is about the roof. I'm trying to envisage exactly where this is on the Trentham Road. Am I right in thinking that this will not be a site that is looked down on a great deal, and indeed is the roof as proposed going to be the consonant with that sort of greyish colour that we see, which is pretty uniform across that site?
Yes, that's my understanding. That's a proposal to have similar roof materials as already on the buildings within the site, the existing buildings. And you can't look down on this. You won't see this building from any public vantage points because of the new building, because of its its position to the rear of existing buildings, and the existing buildings are some distance from the road in any event. So yeah, it's quite a discrete site in terms of its impact on views from public vantage points.
That's good. I mean, I think if we can tie into whatever we decide, if we decide to go forward with this evening, something about the colour of the roof. I mean, I don't think any of us here would want to have a bright, shiny roof at that juncture. I mean, I think those recessive grey colours on the aerial photograph are fine, but I do think it should mix in with those. Councillor Maxfield wishes to speak. Councillor.
Hi, thank you. I think Elaine's actually sort of really covered everything I was going to say, to be honest with you. I think this is something that is a positive. I mean, reading through and looking at the map I've got on here, it seems to be that this has been a business that has grown, which has got to be a good thing, because obviously they're now looking at being able to build some purpose-built or better barn building area. And I mean, just looking through on the record, the consultees, you know that, I'm not saying it's necessarily what everyone's going to vote for, but where for parish councils also saying that actually they think it's going to be a great development and the business, and it's not putting any harm on immediate areas, it's far enough away from the road, it's not overlooked, nor does it overlook. I think as long as it adheres to the conditions that are being set out, and perhaps the additional one that you said yourself, Chair, with the roofing, then I think I'm quite happy to get behind and support this, and go with what the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Reddish. Hang on, Marion, you're not. I still can't get you unmuted. I don't know why. You're okay now.
Am I all right now?
Yeah.
Well, I was saying, this is in my notes, I've got Sherwood Green for the roofing. Is that the same as the grey that Mrs Moulton was suggesting? But my question is really about the house on site and the facilities to be linked. I just want to try and firm that up so that in the future there isn't the chance that the house might be separate from the business. Can we actually condition that the business and the house go together, just so that there is no reason for people to want to separate the two?
Yes, so it is something we do where regularly in these kinds of situations where a business could adversely affect the living conditions of the closely linked residential property. So we are recommending such a condition. We have imposed it on other businesses, not a dog agility training centre, because I don't think we've got any others in the borough that are certainly none we've given planning permission for. Maybe some historical such uses out there. I've got no concerns that about such a condition. I think it's a condition that we can impose and would be defendable should anybody wish to challenge that condition through an appeal. In terms of the roof colour, I was of the understanding that it was to be grey. If there is reference to Sherwood Green, that may be their intention. We can, to avoid any doubt, impose a condition, and I'm just checking whether there is a condition recommended. A condition that the facing materials are agreed. I can't see one in the list. So if members are unsure, have a particular preference for grey rather than green, then such a condition could be imposed on the permission and added to the list of conditions that are recommended.
At danger of putting words in Councillor Reddish's mouth, I think probably what we're interested in is it being consonant across the sites. In other words, we don't want anything that jars with what's already there. So if everything else is grey, I think this should be grey. My reading, as I remember, and I can't split backwards and forwards, unfortunately, on the documentation here, was that the Sherwood Green was for the top, but the sides of the building,
Right.
rather than the roof itself.
I think I would be happy with the grey, so I'd like that condition. And I think I would like to suggest that we do put a condition on attaching the house to the business, as it were.
I'm happy to second that. I think that's important to stop sort of exploitative use of these things. Councillor Northcott, I know, also wishes to speak. Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'll be supportive of those two proposals that you just mentioned. Having been a ward councillor where this was in my patch for a good number of years, I know this property very well, and I know the business and the how it's been operated. This is nothing unusual out in this country area. I can't see any reason whatsoever not to support this as a business going forward. I don't think the impact on anybody else is a concern. It's quite some distance away from other properties. It's not overlooked. It's in a reasonably expansive area. I'd be happy to second proposal for moving what you just proposed, Chair. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Any further comment from members? I don't think our officers, I think that our officers have already commented on what's just been proposed. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to a vote, and the vote will be for approval of the application in front of us with those two extra bits, one about the colour of the roofing, and the one that Councillor Marion Reddish proposed, that the house be tied to the business.
Yeah.
So we'll go with that, and then after that, what we'll do is we'll if that falls, we'll then go back to the original proposal. But I hope it's now saying 2 participants have raised hands. I can't see any hands that have been raised. Is there anybody who else wishes to? In that case, let's progress to a vote. And again, I'm going to do it in the order that I see people. So first of all, Councillor Proctor, are you for or against that proposition?
For.
Councillor Maxfield, are you for or against that proposition?
For.
Councillor Jones, when I managed to unmute you, are you for or against that proposition?
For.
Councillor Moffat, again, if you just wait one moment while I find you. Are you for or against that proposition?
For.
Councillor Northcott, are you for or against that proposition? And finally, Councillor Williams, are you for or against that proposition?
For.
Oh, sorry, and there's Marion, of course. Are you for or against that proposition?
For.
In that case, that passes unanimously, and we can progress to our next item. And that item is the item number 6 for the Heritage Centre at Apedale. Again, I think we've got a presentation. As I say, I do have a non-prejudicial interest in this, as I am a member of the Moseley Railway Trust. But again, I think Sean's got the stuff, if he can put it on screen.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'll just call up this one. So this is the item for, I'm just looking, yeah, Apedale, there it is. So this is the next item, and again, Elaine has the details on the application, so I can pass that one over to Elaine. If you're ready.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so the thick black line shows the position of the proposed building, which is a steel storage building for use of storage of railway artifacts in association with the existing heritage centre that's at this site within the Apedale Country Park. That is a picture showing the building and the tracks going into the building. So it is a long, narrowish building. If you can move on to the next photo. So this is an aerial photograph. The building is to the end, yes, where the hand is, close to an existing area of hard standing, and next to a wooded area. So this is a closer view, aerial view of the position of the building. So it is sitting amongst the existing artifacts and buildings of the Heritage Centre. And then the third photograph is a 3D image. So you can see that the building was sit against a backdrop of mature planting within the existing site. If you could move on to the next slide. Yes, so this is the building. It's obviously functional building, so it's got 3 roller shutter doors, just a couple of door openings in this 2 of the sides of the building, and the colour that is shown, juniper green, they've now amended it. It's no longer proposing to be juniper green, it's mussel green, but unfortunately that colour on my screen doesn't really show the colour. It's a darker recessive green. It's certainly not a bright green that the elevation or plans suggest. It's quite a recessive colour, but yes, the visual isn't showing up particularly well. I think the next few slides are photographs of the site context. So this is from looking towards the site of the building. If you can move on, yeah, the longer distance view of the site. You can see how well landscaped it is in the surrounding areas. There's a lot of trees. Next slide. So that's the hard surfaced area that you saw in the aerial photos, and you're looking along the line of where the building would be beyond the hard surfaced area there. And the last photograph just gives an idea of the other buildings and paraphernalia that's on the site that's associated with the Heritage Centre, and they just want to ensure that they have a suitable building to store some of the artifacts that are currently stored externally on the site. This is a green belt site, and the conclusion that's been reached is that it is inappropriate development, but that there are very special circumstances to justify this development because of the nature of the use and which is this Heritage Centre, and the justification through the provision of greater security and storage for the artifacts that they have on the site. So the recommendation is one of approval subject to a number of conditions. Thanks you
very much, Elaine. Just before Sean switches it off, for those members who don't know, that strange looking structure on the right hand side is the trench complex that the group has built for those tracks to trenches events that they've had over several years. So that again may orientate some people, I don't know. So if we can go back to our standard stream, thanks Sean. I know Councillor Maxfield wishes to speak. Let's see if I can unmute her. So I think you can now speak, Councillor.
I can, yeah. Again, thanks, Chair. Again, you know, Elaine's very kindly sort of given us a very good description of everything that's going on and the need for it. And I just, again, I'm quite happy to go along with the officer recommendation. I think they're after, as Elaine said, a security and storage of the artifacts. I know that this is a well-used touristy and local attraction area, and I think we'd be doing it a bit of a disservice if we're not actually getting to be able to put things securely and also on show to the general public. I'm quite happy now that you've said about the colour change. I think that will actually blend in a little bit more with the surroundings. It's not going to be quite as new, shall we say. It'll look as if it's been weathered perhaps a little bit more. So I'm quite happy to give this my backing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Moffat.
Hello. So I'd like to, I agree with Councillor Maxfield. I think it's a really great proposal. And And the point about the paint being changed is really good, because it was slightly garish, I think, so the more muted green is great. I think it's something for us to be really proud of as a borough, the work that's gone on in APEDALE. And it is a place that people come to visit. It's a place of education and heritage. So I'd be really happy to support and go along with the officer's recommendations.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Councillor Northcott.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just going to say I would be more than happy to second the proposal for this. It's an integral part and heritage of the area. That being said, I think it justifies the proposal that we have here in front of us, ladies and gentlemen. I think this isn't acting in the essence against the green belt and what's already there. I think this actually will enhance the area in terms of what can be provided locally in terms of the heritage of the area and the learning capacities that Councillor Moffat has highlighted. Thank you, Chair.
Any further comment from members? I'll just make one off. As I say, I am a party pre, but an awful lot of hard work has been done by this group, and I'm sure members are aware of the devastating damage vandals can do to heritage railways, where hours and hours of voluntary work can be trashed within seconds. And I think having the security for some of the locos there, some of which are really quite valuable, one some members will know, was actually brought back and resurrected from a river in Africa. He's now running happily up and down that line. So I'm not going to vote, because I feel that it's important for me to remain as a member seen to be unbiased in this. But I would just urge the goodness of this cause, and indeed say to all of you, why not join the Moseley Railway Trust? It doesn't cost you very much, and it keeps a lovely little line which kiddies really enjoy going in the borough. But I look for other comments from members, and then we'll proceed to a vote. Councillor Reddish. Hang on, Councillor. Go on.
Yes, I'm quite happy for this proposal. I just wonder if the developer might just be tempted to go back to the juniper green. So can we just sort of almost condition or put it in that we really do prefer the new mussel green, was it? Can we actually put that in the recommendation? I just don't want them to go back to juniper, because, sorry Elaine.
The colour that was shown on the elevations wasn't a true representation of the juniper green. It's a sort of a soft mid green, so it's not as garish as the elevation suggested. It's not as recessive, not quite as recessive as the mussel green. So you could specify within the approval that it's mussel green, but I just wanted to assure you that the juniper green is not the colour that you were seeing on that elevation. It's not like that. So okay. It's not. It shouldn't be as concerning as that colour.
But my understanding is what you said, Elaine, is that the applicant has already said that they're happy to move to this other colour. Is that correct?
That's their suggestion. Yeah, they had said juniper green, and then during the course of the afternoon they changed their mind to mussel green. So
if they're happy, I see no reason why we can't, if members are agreeable, condition that and say that's the colour that we'd like them to have. I
think I'd be happy with that. I think I'd be happy with that.
So what we'll do then is we'll take a vote on this with the idea that we're going to have mussel green lurking in there. Okay. So in that respect, could I ask Councillor Proctor, are you for or against that proposal with the mussel green?
For.
If I can find, hang on. Councillor Maxfield, are you for or against? For.
For.
Councillor Jones. Are you for or against? Sorry, for. Excellent. Councillor Moffat.
For.
Councillor Reddish.
For. For.
Councillor Williams.
4.
And Councillor Northcott.
4.
So that again passes unanimously with Muscle Green bundled into our application. That can take us, I think, to our next item. And again, that's the one for the cottage at Bowsey Wood. And again, I think we've got a presentation on that. So if you could do that for us, Sean, I'd be grateful.
Thank you. Yes, this is the next presentation, and again, Elaine's able to take this one forward a bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got an application for full planning permission and a separate application for listed building consent. The proposal involves.
You've gone off, Elaine.
Yeah.
Muted me.
She's back, I think.
Yes, can you hear me now?
I can, Elaine, yes.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, so the proposal involves the demolition of some existing extensions to the building and an outbuilding. If you can move on to the next slide. So this is the property, the T-shaped building to the left below the access. I don't know where the hand is showing that. So that's the existing building with the extensions. If you can move on to the next slide. So I'm going to show you a few photographs of the building. So this is a listed building, which is quite a modest sized building. The rooms on the upper floor are all within the roof space. And there have been a number of unsympathetic additions to the building over the years. So if you could move on to the next photograph. So the extension on the right hand side, that's one of the extensions that would be removed. If you can move on to the next photo. So yeah, and another view of that. And the porch I think would go as well. Next photograph. So yes, you can see some of the disrepair that the building is in. If you can move on, please. So just a view of the site context. It is quite a modest, I mean, it is an existing 3-bed dwelling, but I think a lot of the accommodation in the roof space is quite small in terms of the room sizes and is constrained by headspace. So and some of the ground floor accommodation is provided in unsympathetic additions to the building, and what they're proposing to do is to remove the unsympathetic additions and build an extension or a new building which will be linked to the original cottage. If you could move on to the next slide. So I think if you move on to the next one, it zooms in a bit. So the pink or red hatched building is the existing building. So the dotted bits up at the bits of the building that will be removed. So the end of the building goes, and extension on the north side of the building and to the side. And the blue hatched building image is a new build with the link where the porch is at the moment. So as you'll see, there's an outbuilding that will be removed to accommodate the new building. It is quite a sizable footprint compared to the original. If you move on to the next. So this gives you an idea of the appearance of the proposed extension. So I think the bottom left-hand image gives you an idea of how they're trying to what the design of the building. So it's got high amount of glazing in that end elevation, and in terms of its scale, it does, it's fair to say, compete with what will remain of the original building. But this is a proposal that has been the subject of a lot of negotiation between the case officer and the council's conservation officer to get to a point where it is considered to be acceptable in terms of its relationship and impact on this listed building. If we move on to the next slide, you'll see an earlier iteration of the proposal. This is something that raised concerns with the conservation officer because of its greater scale and its greater impact on the listed building. And there was also concerns that the nature of the accommodation within the new build and what was proposed in the original would mean that they could quite easily not use the original building, and the only justification for this extension, which is a disproportionate extension in the greenbelt, so it is inappropriate development within the greenbelt, is that it would bring the existing modest property into a more viable use. It will provide better accommodation and would involve the restoration of the historic fabric of the building. And the concern was with the scheme that is in front of you now would be that you could quite happily live in the new build element and not enter the building. So it wouldn't, the benefits to the listed building wouldn't be as significant as beneficial. So if you could just move back to the slide before. So this is what is being proposed. The new build element to the left hand side of the building with the link, and this is something that is now supported by the conservation officer, and the recommendation is that planning permission and listed building consent should be granted subject to the recommended conditions. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. Again, Sean, if you could knock that off for the moment. Maybe we will have to come back to it, I don't know. So I invite comment from members. Councillor Williams.
I mean, we're on Bowsey Wood, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, thanks, just get it right. I'm just concerned with the public right of way. I'm looking at the map there in front of me, not our map, public right of way map, and there's a public right of way that runs. I'm not quite sure where it contacts with the building. I've no problem with what's going to happen there, because it's a little spot there. Anybody who doesn't know it, it's right by very historical, by Healy Castle, where the vital orderlies lived, and all the rest goes back in history. It's a lovely spot with a little stream running across the front. I'm not quite sure where the public right of way, or it just ends coming from Bethel. Looking at it, ends at the line of the property, and then it goes into a permissive path, and then there's a public right of way that carries on, takes you to more or less to Healy, round Healy Castle. So that's my main concern, the public right of way, if I'm on the right track.
I don't know if our officer can answer that comment. Elaine, can you answer a comment about right of way?
I can't clarify where the public right of way is. All I can say is that the proposed building, the new build element, replaces or would be partially on the site of an existing outbuilding, and in terms of the impact on the public right of way, should it cross the site, I don't think it would have any greater impact than the existing situation. The route may already be affected. I can't confirm that one way or the other, but it certainly wouldn't make the situation any worse. I think it's unlikely that the route of the footpath though will cut through this site and be where the proposed extension is, and it certainly wasn't picked up as a constraint within our back office system. So I don't think there's going to be any adverse impact on any existing rights of way in the locality.
Could we put a note on, Mr. Chairman?
I'm sure we can, yes. I think I agree with you. These are important issues. So if we can check that one through, I think that's going to be important. Councillor Moffat.
Hello. Could we just have some clarification, because you've reassured us that the conservation officer is now satisfied with the new design. Could I ask, has the new design gone back to the Conservation Advisory Working Party? Because obviously they had concerns with the original design. I'm just interested to know what they think of the new design.
The amended scheme wasn't reported back to the Conservation Advisory Working Party, so we don't have the views of them on the proposal that we're asking you to determine tonight.
Right, that's interesting. So I must confess, I'm not awfully happy with the proposal here. I mean, it seems to me that the extension dwarves to some degree. The footprint must be about 150%, mustn't it, of the original building, I would think. And to me, the design, and I would have preferred to see clearer pictures of that design as well. It doesn't seem to me to respect the design of the original building at all. It's a completely different style, and it is a listed building, and I can see myself feeling that this really detracts from the building as it stands. It leaves it as a sort of add-on to a modern building rather than being a sympathetic development of a building that's there. So I don't know. I mean, one issue, and I'll ask the officer here, is, I mean, is it possible for the committee to defer this item so that we can get the opinion of Corp before we progress? I mean, I'm also aware that we are a small committee here, and therefore at one level I don't want my feelings to be disproportionate, but at the same time I feel that we should get a cross-section of the council's opinions on the design issue. After all, we do stress that design is very important.
Certainly, if that's committee's decision that they don't wish to determine the application tonight and wish the matter to be brought back to a future meeting with the views of the Conservation Advisory Working Party on the amended scheme, then certainly that could be done. I mean, the design of the building is deliberately designed to be a contrast to the existing building, to be a standalone building with a small link. That was a deliberate design choice, and that's something that the council's conservation officer supports, but I can't confirm that that's what the Conservation Advisory Working Party would support. As I say, the views on this particular proposal as now presented aren't known. So yes, if you wish to defer for that reason, that's fine. That's within your gift.
Let's go through various people who've got their hands up now. So Councillor Reddish.
Thank you. I share your concerns, Andy. The relationship of the old with the new doesn't lie very safely with me. How does it fit in with the street scene? Are there any other houses anywhere near that would have to look at it, or rather the residents would have to look at? How does it fit in? Was it standalone in a field away from anywhere?
Could we have the aerial photo again, Sean, please?
We got the photos if I go back through them. Okay.
Okay, so so there are buildings nearby, but it's so well landscaped, the site, that there's not clear views between one building and the next, and there is a bit of variety in the properties, the design of the properties. They're of different ages and different styles in that locality. This is a track that just serves these properties. It's not a through road that takes you to anywhere else. So there is a small group of buildings of varying sizes and styles, ages, and yes, because of the existing mature landscaping in the area, they don't relate as in terms of their context as closely as they might in a more built up area. So I think and the extension is further away from the group of properties on that bend. So it's where I don't know whether you could see my cursor.
Yeah.
So it's to the left hand side of the building. So I think it will be within a group of trees. It's not as visually prominent as well, it's not visually prominent at all, although I can't argue with the point that in terms of its scale compared to what would remain of the original building, it is quite it's quite a bit larger.
Can you knock that off again, Sean? Because I can't see who's got their hands up and who's got their hands down. Thanks very much. Councillor Maxfield.
Yes, thanks, Chair. At the risk of sounding like I've not been following, which I have, so apologies if I'm come across being a bit daft, but the mention of CORP being involved, on page 33, it looks like they've actually had done, because it says the Conservation Advisory work that as part of the consultation responses. So there is a response there from now. Is that with, because it says the original scheme, was that the scheme that was before this, or was that the comment on the current one? Because it also then says about if the design is retained and about the glazed gable, which is essentially what we've been looking at.
This application, the proposal has changed during the course of the application. So the elevations and plans that was on the last slide, the larger building, that was the one that CORP commented on, and following their comments and the comments of the conservation officer, amendments were secured, and those are what we're asking members to make a decision on tonight. But those plans, those amended plans, weren't reported back to Conservation Advisory Working Party, so we don't know their views on those comments. But the negotiations and the amendments that were sought and secured were to address the comments of CORP and move towards a scheme that the officer and the conservation officer felt would be more satisfactory to them. But I can't confirm that they're happy with it because they haven't seen it and commented upon the latest version of the proposed plans.
So what we're looking at now is what's been agreed with the conservation officer thinks it's acceptable. The officer who's dealing with it thinks it's acceptable. The only people who it hasn't gone back to then is the CORP to see whether or not they're actually quite happy with what the conservation officer thinks.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Councillor Moffat, I think you've got your hand up again.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that my concern isn't about a modern building sitting next to the original, because I can see that actually having something that isn't trying to look like the original is probably more tasteful. It is just the size still, and I would feel safer personally, seeing as we have got CORP and some real experts on there, just for them to have another look, particularly with regards to the materials and the finish really. I completely support the idea of the planning permission being given. I completely support. It does make it a much more viable home, and I can see how they would sit in sympathy to each other, except for the size of it. I'm just alarmed a little bit still about the size. Thank
you. Councillor Williams.
I've said, well, we go with the recommendations, Chairman, but I've no problems with it going back to CORP and for their comments.
Hey, Sean, I think you wanted to comment as well.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Chairman. A couple of points. The footpaths one, while you've been debating, I was able to go on to Staffordshire County's website and actually look at their online footpaths map. So I should be able to show you that on screen if that helps. So if I just pull that up. So what we've got here is the online version of their public rights of way map. It's not the definitive map, that's in paper form only, but it's a very good indication of what we have. And the question about footpaths was a very pertinent one, because we've got 3 rights of ways coming pretty much centred in on that property, but none of them actually affect the property. They all come up to that sort of bit of adopted highway, which is the sort of cul-de-sac that runs around the north and east of the property. But then I'm not sure what the legend means in terms of bridleways and footpaths, green and purple. But we can see there it's got the rights of way, but it does not affect. So the we don't have to sort of do the notifications or anything else for that. So that's the one side of it. The other side of it, as you were sort of picking up, was around Corp and going back. And I think normally we would have taken that approach. Recalling the sort of process of putting this item to agenda, it was when the COVID-19 outbreak was just starting to take hold. And it's been resolved not to sort of proceed with Corp meetings in the foreseeable future, because we don't know what the meetings, well, when we'll be next able to hold one. This item has already sort of been on the in the system for a little while, and the officers have secured an extension of time, but it will be out of time. And if we wait too long for a Corp meeting, we could find ourselves facing the applicants trying to push a decision again for the non-determination, which is a difficult one. On the actual design of it, I'll be frank, I first viewed the plans and I was a little bit anxious because I see a sort of fairly large structure against a little old cottage, and initially it doesn't sit well with me, but it's that analysis and closer scrutiny of it and understanding, as Elaine set out in her initial presentation, why this proposal has come forward, because basically the existing cottage is a very small building which is exceptionally difficult to live in. Myself, 6'2", I think I'd be banging my head on every doorway in there. And with the combination of modern building control standards, which set head heights and staircases and everything else, even if you try and prune these buildings down to their barest essentials, you still end up with a building that is comparable scale to the existing structure. So the scope for pruning it down is very limited in that respect. So we have a situation where we have the small cottage, it has some sort of poor extensions through the 80s. We're stripping that back to what is the heritage building in its own right, and that will be read as the listed structure. It'll have the newer structure away from it, linked through that sort of glass attachment, so it will be a separate structure, but it will bring the building back into use, hopefully. And I was pleased with the officers who've done that review and not just accepted first time what was presented to them, but challenged and sought that smaller extension and taken on board some of Corp's earlier concerns. So we have listened to them and reflected on what their anxieties were about that original design, which has led to this iterative process to the current proposal. So that's the process. So I'm saying the option there is to defer, but the risk is that without Corp having any set meetings in the agenda, that could be a deferral that just goes on ad infinitum, and that opens up the risk of non-determination. Thank you, Chairman.
Right. Councillor Moffat, I think, to make another comment.
Yeah, just thank you, Sean, for that. And it's reassuring to hear you talk about your own initial anxieties and then kind of revisiting it. So, you know, we have expert officers for a reason. So I feel my concerns are allayed a little, but I would like for us as a panel to at least make it clear to the Corp group that we would have been putting this back to them if it wasn't for the current conditions, as a matter of our respect for them and their opinions.
Yeah, I sympathise with that, Councillor. I do think, though, we better go for a vote because I think the dangers of non-determination are greater.
Yeah.
No,
I absolutely agree with that. So what I'm doing is withdrawing my initial anxiety and suggesting we take it to court.
right.
And in place of that, saying that at least we let Corp know that we'd thought about their concerns, and in respect to the concurrent conditions, I think it's important to make a decision today so things don't just keep getting extended and extended.
Right, so this is a plea to David Elkington, who's lurking somewhere in the background. Is it possible for you to unmute Councillor Jones? Because I've been trying desperately to do this for the vote, and I can unmute everyone else, but for some reason I cannot unmute Councillor Jones.
I'm just trying now. No, I can't do that either.
So don't ask me
No,
how.
he's in.
But it won't let anybody else control my mute button.
No, you stay with it, Dave.
Right, so I'm going to take a vote now on the application in front of us. So, Councillor Proctor, are you for or against?
I'm in favour. I'm for the application.
Okay. Councillor Jones, now we can hear you.
I'm for the application.
Councillor Moffat.
I'm for the application.
Councillor Northcott.
I'm for the application.
Councillor Williams.
For.
Councillor Reddish.
With a heavy heart, I'll say 4. Doesn't lie very comfortably with me, but 4.
Councillor Maxfield.
For.
And I'm afraid I just don't think it works at all. I'm going to vote against, but it makes no difference. The proposal is carried. So we can progress to our next item. I did call everyone's name there, didn't I think? Hope so.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Which is to go on to our report item. So item 8, the quarterly report on extensions on S106s. Again, I don't. Sean, you want to speak briefly to this, or Elaine?
No, it's as recommended.
In that case, I invite comment, if any, from members.
Move it, Chair.
Are we content with this vote? I'll take this one by a simple show of visual hands. Can I see those in favour of simply accepting this report? That's a clear majority. In fact, it's unanimous. That brings us to item 9, Boggs Cottages. And here, of course, we've got some good news, haven't we, in that the start letter for this has actually been issued now. All I want to do is seek reassurance from our officers, because that the date in the report, which I believe is the 22nd, as I recall, that date is still a hard date given where we are in present circumstances, and if it is, that we will get our paperwork in on time.
Yes, that is still the date for the submission of the council's case, and yes, I'm working towards completing the statement to issue by that date. So it started. I've no reason to think it won't be completed by that day. It's possible that the inspectorate would agree an extension, but at the moment I've no reason to think that it's going to be necessary. I'm working to ensure it's completed by the given date.
Any comments from members?
No, just need to get on with it.
Yeah, then, we're content with that, and in particular we're content with the officer's assurance that we're going to get our stuff in there. Yep. This is obviously a long-running process.
Yep.
Can we then move to item 10, the item at Dorrelspill Betley? And again, can I just ask our officer, because I do recall Councillor Gary White writing to me about 3 weeks ago, so saying that he thought some works had started on this this place again. And if we haven't checked that out, can we do something about checking it out?
A site visit has been undertaken recently. There does seem to be some activity, but it appears to be in the Cheshire East area. But but we are keeping an eye on it, and my understanding is that there will be a site visit, a joint site visit between the Planning Enforcement Officer, the Environmental Health Division to this site and a number of sites in the area where it would appear that some waste importation activity are being carried out. So we are still keeping an eye on it, but I don't, the matter that yes, the committee have resolved to be kept updated on, there's certainly no activity on site associated with the completion of that track. It's just other activity on the wider Doddles Pool site.
Okay, can I just explore that a little bit more? Would it be possible for that to have been done by the time of this committee's next meeting, so that we have a sort of firm knowledge of what's going on?
No reason to think it couldn't be done by the next, although the next, we have a deadline for publication of the agenda for the next meeting, which are currently scheduled for the 28th of April, 2 weeks time, is Friday. So we could get a report on there. Whether a site visit has been undertaken by on the agenda, I couldn't say, but certainly by the meeting a site visit can have taken.
Right. Could I suggest to members that we do have that as a report on the next one, so that we if things are starting, that we know what's going on? Does that seem to be a sensible idea? And again, I think now I am the host now. Look at that. So if anyone wishes to comment on this, if you now raise your hands, I can hopefully let you speak. Or are we, Councillor Proctor?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there has been some most unfortunate activity around this site. I understand what the officer says when it doesn't impact necessarily on the item that is before us tonight. However, there are some major concerns in this area with activity that's going on, and I know the Environment Agency have been involved, but this site is adjoined by other land where activity that's taking place is causing major concern in the Betley area and indeed on the outside of the Audley Parish area. So yes, I think it's important that this does come back, because there is genuinely activity that might not be necessarily in line with this report, but some other serious environmental issues are concerned. Thank you.
Right, Sean, did you want to make a comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just to say with Elaine's comments, over the last couple of weeks we picked up that there does seem to be some activity on the roads now with the lockdown. Whether there are people out there who think that they can sort of work with a plum and drive and do whatever they like on the highway. I've spoken to colleagues at county about this, and I'm trying to get in touch with the Environment Agency as well, but it's a collective effort. Now, with any enforcement action, we have two approaches generally. One is to sort of react quickly and get in there. In a case like this, though, I suspect there's an evidence issue that we need to be careful about, because ultimately, with any enforcement action, I'm minded to think about that prosecution at the end of the day and where we might find ourselves in the High Court. That's something to be mindful of, and if we're heading in that route, it's actually having the evidence up front and making sure we've done a thorough job as much as we can. That's not to say we'll sit back and wait until COVID-19's all over. It means we'll have to be prudent and try and gather that evidence carefully. But that evidence is certainly something we want to get hold of and we'll work towards. But it's to try and reassure you as members that this is not something that we'll let slide, but we'll work through. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks very much, Sean. Councillor Moffat.
I'd just like to echo Councillor Proctor's concerns, and also to ask, because it does border with the Cheshire East, is there any opportunity for kind of cross-borough, cross-county cooperation around these concerns? And it may well be going outside of our remit as a planning group, but as a councillor in the area, You know, what advice could we be given from the officers in terms of, you know, going forward in a cooperative way with our neighbours?
Well, we are in close contact with Cheshire East, as well as the Environment Agency and the County Council. It would appear that what the activity that's being carried out is a waste operation. So the Borough Council is not the relevant local planning authority or relevant enforcing authority. That's the County Council, it would appear. But we have agreed to be involved with visiting the site and identifying what evidence there is as to the activity that's taking place on the site to share with the relevant enforcing authority. So there is already very close contact between all the relevant public bodies that may be involved in any future enforcement action, including Cheshire East Council.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. You echo my thoughts that we obviously need to work together as a team on this. We don't want someone to exploit the fact it's on a boundary to get away with doing stuff that they shouldn't do. I feel that it would be useful to have a report, if only a holding report, at the next meeting for this, given that things seem to be going along. I also feel that, I mean, not for the next meeting, but you know, we've been doing this every other meeting, haven't we, that we should also have a holding report for the box cottages still there, so that we see this one to completion. Are members in agreement that that's the path we should proceed on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's do that for those two then. If we can have a report on what may or may not be happening at Doddlespill for the next one, and then box cottages for the one after that, if that's okay.
Yep.
That then takes us to item 11, which is a TPO item, confirmation of a TPO. Again, I don't know if our officers wish to speak to this.
We do have a small presentation for this one, so
please fire away, Sean.
Yeah, just trying to hunt him out on all the, got lots of little screens open. There we go. This is item 11. So this is TPO order that's being looked at. Elaine, are you able to present on this one, or would you like me to continue?
No, I'd like you to continue if that's okay. Thank you.
This was the other one. No, thank you. So this is a confirmation of a tree preservation order. Now it follows on from some works where the owners of the site had previously sought to gain planning permission, but that had failed because of concerns around impact on the protected trees. So we have this area here, Group 1. We're looking to confirm the order, so that would come through as it stands, but the order already includes a beech tree, which I'll show you. So we're looking to modify that slightly to take out the beech tree. But we do feel that the group as a whole does have an asset value for people coming up and down Pinewood Road. So if I carry on through those slides, you can see the aerial shot here. So the site is this area, pocket of land in here, sporadic development, starting to see works coming around the area, little side road. And this is the main road heading now to the south. So you're coming into the group of trees, as that's the leading edge, and you can see in the back a tail edge of the TPO going back over there. And this little tree tucked in behind is the actual beech tree, spelled beech. So, yeah. So there it is. That's actually got basal decay. So its lifespan is significantly shortened. So it seems pointless to actually try and include that, because any application to fell in the future would inherently be successful under a diseased tree element. So you can see here now heading north, the group of pines, and they are a sort of prominent feature. They define the landscape. And its recommendation there is to approve or confirm the TPO, subject to the removal of that beech tree. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks very much, Sean. So again, I invite comment from members.
Officer recommendation.
Again, I think we can probably do this on a show of hands. Could I see those in favour of the recommendation? That I think is unanimous, so that passes. That brings us to our last item, item 12, which is urgent business as defined by the relevant section of the relevant Act. I know of none from my email. I'll just ask our officers if they know of any. In that case, just before we bring our meeting to a close, could I say, first of all, thank you very much for logging in this evening. I think it is important that we have a broadish conspections of campus here, so it's nice to have people from different groups here. I'd also like to say thank you very much to Dave Elkington for facilitating this and making sure that it's worked out properly. I think, obviously, it's been a little bit clunky. Nonetheless, I think it has worked pretty well. If anyone has got any suggestions as to how it might be done better, please send them in, I suppose, to myself, to Dave, and to Sean and Martin to give suggestions as to how we might make these meetings work that bit smoother. But I think tonight it's gone reasonably well. We haven't had a particularly controversial agenda, on the other hand, so maybe that's one of the reasons why it's gone smoothly. But I think we are up to speed with the problems that we've got at the moment. So thank you very much for coming in this evening. I won't say have a safe journey home, because of course you are home, but do stay safe in your homes, and see you next time.